but in a Li Gonglin-like Bai Miao or plain line drawing. And the architectural elements are also drawn simply in even line. Only the landscape features, the hillocks and trees and so on, are done in the Mahujur kind of fluctuating brushstrokes. I should add that two early and important hand scrolls also illustrating the Odes of Bin are in the Metropolitan Museum, one ascribed to Mahujur and done in ink and color on silk, the other, formerly in the Crawford collection, ascribed to Li Gonglin and painted in ink on paper. Both of them are partly reproduced and discussed in Wen Feng's book Beyond Representation, pages 216 to 225. Okay, the translations of the poems that I will be reading are basically those made by Arthur Whaley. They're taken from the Freer's website on Sungniran paintings. Whaley translated these, also Bernard Karlgren did, James Legge before both of them. There's also a translation even by Ezra Pound and various others. But this is mostly Whaley's. Now we go on to look at the paintings, starting with the first section, which is now, it's been on the screen, the first section of the scroll, in which the text reads this way. In the days of the third we plow, in the days of the fourth out we step, together with our wives and children, bringing hampers to the southern acre, where the inspector of fields comes and is pleased. And indeed, you see the women and children and the man down in the lower right bringing these, bringing things to give to the Lord. And the Lord, larger and looking very proper and so on, surrounded by his servitors to the left of them, and then the farmers doing their various things up above. You notice that, as I said, the landscape piece, the tree in the distance and the bits of earth forms and so on, are the only things that are really done in the Mahujur manner. Okay, the next one. This is the one that's mismatched. The text and the picture don't correspond. The written text on it goes this way. In the days of the first frigid winds, in the days of the second bitter cold, with no robes and no homespun, how will we finish the year? But the text that actually illustrated reads this way. In the 7th month the fire ebbs. In the 8th month they pluck the rushes. In the silkworm month we gather mulberry leaves, taking choppers and hatchets to lop the far boughs and high, pulling toward us the tender leaves. And indeed you see people, two men, gathering mulberry leaves. They are, of course, what you feed to the silkworms in sericulture, so it's very important. You have lots of mulberry leaves. And they have a ladder for climbing the trees and a basket for bringing them back and so on. The trees are drawn in a very fine Mahujur manner. Okay, next. This is then the third in the series. And the text reads, in the 7th month the shrike cries. In the 8th month we spin the thread, the black thread and the yellow. With our red dye so bright, we make robes for our Lord. And it's again a scene of women spinning silk, spinning thread, making the cloth, and so on. We will see other scenes of this kind, sericulture, already have seen or will see in what comes, doing this outside their house. The presence of a large, well, we would call it taihu, one of these ornamental rocks that are set up in gardens in places like Suzhou, mainly of rich people, is a bit out of place here. In the city, you wouldn't find it outside a peasant house. But anyway, it's very, it helps the scene. It's strong. And the architectural drawing, as you see behind, is drawn in a very simple, linear way. Next, please. Okay, next one goes, in the days of the first, we hunt badgers and take those foxes and wildcats to make fur robes for our Lord. In the days of the second, there is the meet, where we rehearse our martial skills, keeping for ourselves the wild piglets and presenting to our Lord the 3-year boars. Okay, here is the, you see figures over the edge of the landscape in the upper left. That's a very old feature, as we've seen in going back to Tong painting. and archaistic here, certainly. One of them carrying a hawk for hunting, and then you see the Lord on his horse surrounded by his attendants and people with bows and arrows and so on. And somebody presenting something to him, maybe it's part of a boar, I don't know, and a little dog down below. And then in the lower right you see two peasants walking ahead, one of them leading on little leashes for piglets. In other words, they are able to keep the piglets for themselves, but when they catch a big boar, they have to give it to their lord. Okay, the next one. In the 5th month, the locust moves its legs. In the 6th month, the grasshopper shakes its wings. In the 7th month, it is in the fields. In the 8th month, it is under the eaves. In the 9th month, it is at the door. In the 10th month, the cricket goes under my bed. So here you see the grasshoppers, crickets, insects, whatever they are. You don't see them actually, but the woman and her boy out in the yard catching them, presumably, and another one inside trying to find the one that's gone under the bed. Okay, very simple landscape setting and architecture. An interesting scene. Okay, the next one. The 6th one. We stop up their holes and smoke out the rats. We block up the windows and plaster the doors. Oh, my wife and children, the year is now changing. Let us enter and dwell in this house. So you see the people stopping up their house to keep the cold out so they can survive through the winter. One of the sons plastering something or fixing the wall, and the woman, the little child, or the man arriving with one of his children and another son, I suppose, bringing two things on a pole over his shoulder. Anyway, we're getting ready for the cold winter. The next, please. Okay, the 7th. In the morning we gather reeds. At night we twist rope and go quickly up on the roof that we may begin to sow our grain. Okay, and here you see somebody gathering reeds and another one twisting them into rope to make rope. This rope twister, by the way, in the same posture, using his foot to stretch the rope between his toes, appears also in a hanging scroll ascribed to Mahajer in the National Palace Museum in Taipei. So it may well be a motif that he himself originated. The trees done in the Mahajer style up top are quite fine. Okay, the 8th and last picture, the text reads, In the days of the 2nd we hack the ice with ringing blows. In the days of the 3rd we bring it into the cold shed. In the days of the 4th we rise before the dawn, presenting lamb roasts and offering garlic. Well, here you see this is quite interesting. It's a winter scene, obviously. The river is still frozen, and you see it at the left with the ice cracked, and the men have gathered the ice. You see them with kind of hose from which they hacked it, and are carrying it in baskets and storing it, not in a shed, the cold shed mentioned in the poem, but in a cave. And this is the way they would keep things cold. It was a kind of a outdoor Frigidaire, what am I saying? Cooler anyway. And you would put things in there with the ice, and it would stay. It would help them to stay fresh and edible through the warmer season. Notice, by the way, in this one, the seal in the upper right, the seal reading Junyu Zhongbi, to be treasured among the myriad jades, which is the seal of the Jin Emperor Zhongzong, which, if it's genuine, makes the scroll at least as old as his time, which is late 12th, early 13th century. Finally, for Mahajer, I'm going to show a hand scroll, the Red Cliff. This is another, I showed one earlier in this lecture by an artist named Wu Ranger. Here's one by Mahajer. And here are the just old black and white reproductions, the first section and the later section of the scroll, reproduced so they stretch across the whole space. And again, we see at the beginning a foreground, a bit of shore with grass and trees, and then the river with the swirling water and shooting foam. And then at the end, we see the cliff with the water with trees. Okay, here we go. Here are I have some pretty good slides you made from the original. This is scrolls that I remember really admiring and enjoying, and I'm glad to have good enough slides to show, because here is where Mahajar's poetic manner really fits and provides a strange and very special experience as you roll it. Here at the beginning of the scroll, here's the shore with bits of vegetation, bits of wind-blown reeds, and then distant hills very softly shown with just brushstrokes. And then as we go to the middle of the scroll, next please, here is the middle of the scroll, and here we see the familiar boat with Sudungpo and his two guests. And here, instead of a single boatman, we have the boatman at one end with his oar, and we have two servants down at the other end. But they're all turning to look at the cliff in this case, instead of eating their late night dinner or whatever. So as this brings our attention to the cliff, and all around them, here's the detail, all around them is quite beautiful painting of waves, which perfectly suits the style of Mahajar, and makes this a very special viewing experience. Here in close, looking rather low class and somehow looking up rather concerned and holding the end of his oar under his arm. And here is Sudungpo, seen, he's the major figure, turning, looking very dignified, and looking toward the cliff. He's musing on the cliff. He believed wrongly, it turned out, that this was a place where a famous battle had been fought, and he was remembering this battle. Well, he got the wrong place, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt the poem any. And here in the bottom of the boat, you see the pot of wine and the food and so on, and quite wonderful painting of the waves around it. At the lower left here, where the boat is stirring up the waves, and then further on, quieter waves. And then, as we come to the end of the scroll, here's a slide of the end, the water running over the rocks. This, by the way, is one of the wonderful bits of the poem, the water running over the rocks near the shore, and an old bare tree, and the water beating against this cliff, drawn in Mahajar's wonderful drawing. Now, here's a detail. That's wonderful. Mahajar really is, at his best, he is an artist of real poetic sensitivities and a really individual and very moving style at its best. I really, myself, prefer this to the Mauscher scrolls, but it doesn't matter of opinion. They're all fine. Okay, now then, here we go. Here is something quite different. This is something outside the Academy. Okay, now we come to a scroll which is one of my own favorites of all Southern Sung painting, or Chinese painting generally. This is the scroll of the Dream Journey on the Shaoxiang Rivers. It's now in the Tokyo National Museum, acquired, I think, early in the 20th century from China. Famous painting there. It has a wrong attribution based on a fake signature at the end, a wrong attribution to to Li Gonglin. Li Gonglin, the major literati painter whom we saw works by or attributed to in the 8th lecture. And the various writings on the scroll, such as the inscription by Dong Qichang, you see partly here at the far right, are all taken to be a Li Gonglin painting, and praise it as that. It was owned by Xiang Yuanbian. Dong Qichang was part of a kind of a tutor in his household for a while, saw his paintings. Xiang Yuanbian's seals are on it. Gao Shiqi, his bamboo window seal is here, another 17th century collector, and so on, not to speak of the Qianlong Emperor. So this painting went into great collections in the late period, but it went in because it was attributed to Li Gonglin, not because of what it was. Now we come to what the painting really is. We know from one of the inscriptions that, in fact, the artist